I am thrilled to introduce today's keynote speaker. Shanel Lindsay is the founder and CEO of Ardent Life, a cutting-edge technology and education company that has become a global leader in providing high-tech consumer products in the cannabis space. Shortly after Massachusetts decriminalized cannabis possession, Shanel saw firsthand that decriminalization doesn't grant individuals the protections they were supposed to be afforded when she was arrested for possessing less than half of the decriminalized amount instead of receiving a citation. An attorney by training who practiced as a civil litigator with Sugarman, Rogers, Barshek, and Cohen, and worked as an executive for the state before becoming a cannabis entrepreneur, Shanel works towards seeing the new cannabis economy converge with the traditional professional world while also focusing on reversing the racially based impact on the industry from the, quote, war on drugs. Shanel co-drafted Question 4, the ballot initiative that legalized cannabis for adult use in Massachusetts, and in 2017 was appointed to the Cannabis Advisory Board, where she provides recommendations to state marijuana regulators. Just recently appointed for a second term, she has called on regulators to reserve the upcoming social consumption and delivery licenses exclusively for participants in the state's equity and economic empowerment programs. Shanel is also the co-founder of Equal Opportunities Now, a nonprofit that successfully fought to preserve and expand the equity provisions in the new Massachusetts cannabis law and works with communities and state governments around the country to create an equitable marijuana industry. And EON is the designated nonprofit for this event. Happy to introduce Shanel Lindsay.
Hey everyone, good afternoon. How's everyone doing? I'm really happy to be here today, and I would hope that you guys give me a little bit of leeway. I got a really bad scratch on my cornea yesterday, so I'm really happy that I'm feeling and looking a little bit better today. But if you see me fumbling a little bit, it's just because my eyesight's not as good as it could be. And if anybody is here that I know, like Corey that I saw, that I haven't recognized yet, please make sure to come up and say hi afterwards, because I always love to see everybody. So I am very excited to be here today, in many ways coming here to discuss cannabis on this stage here with you in front of respected attorneys and colleagues is a very full circle moment for me. As a young lawyer, I remember being very excited to be named a rising star by Mass Lawyers Weekly, and also enjoying seeing my fellow attorneys at Sugarman Rogers snag their super lawyer accolades. So I never did imagine, though, that I would find myself here on this particular path, although looking back, it definitely is the right fit for me. Susan gave a wonderful introduction of me. Thank you very much for that. And if anybody's wondering what Ardent Life, my company, is, there's a lot of questions in the cannabis space, and most often people think that individuals or business owners are involved in the cultivation or growing of cannabis, but my business is actually an ancillary business. I developed a technology based on my decades of using cannabis at this point to treat an ovarian cyst that I have, and brought a technology to the marketplace in a very new and strange world where the laws converge and often nothing makes sense. And so in addition to the business side of things, obviously I'm very active on the political side of cannabis, having to draft the law that passed and made cannabis legal here in Massachusetts, and now have this interesting role as an advisor helping the commission figure it all out and helping us be a leader here in Massachusetts, but also throughout the country. Another thing is I'm a Bostonian, a Boston native, and I have lived my entire life here in Massachusetts other than going to UPenn for undergrad, and I'm so excited and really amazed at the transformation of cannabis over these last couple of years here. And so with all I do in the cannabis space, I have added one really, really important accolade just over this last month, and that is that I am, believe it or not, officially an empty nester. I just brought my son down. We drove him down to New York, dropped him off at the dorm room, and that was a major, major life inflection point for sure. And as we were riding back, I was thinking about legal cannabis and having a kid in college. These two things that I love very, very dearly, both of these branching out and making their mark on the world, so to speak. And when it comes to cannabis, when I think about where we are here in this industry, that is very much how it feels, right? This whole world of cannabis, this legalization, this movement from the legalization of cannabis to the business side of things is very much like a child. And when we think about the movement, the cannabis movement, it is something that was loved and protected in its infancy by advocates. And at that point, only cannabis's best interest was in mind, right? We were fighting for its basic needs of survival, a clean and healthy environment, just for people not to be getting arrested, for laws to be instilled with common sense and humanity. And in many, many ways, decriminalization was like elementary school for the cannabis industry and legalization. It was very much a good start, but there was still so much learning to do. When I think about medical legalization, that push, it was much like middle school. We had bigger projects, there was much more studying, reading and writing of laws and regulations, but as often happens here with Massachusetts, things got a little hairy. We got introduced to some not good elements. We saw a push away from the community-first ideals that cannabis was raised with in exchange for corporate preferences that we saw. Cannabis then entered what I would like to consider high school when we pushed for adult use. There was a new focus. It was really now or never to prepare and give this movement the foundation for the next step. And there were definitely struggles when it came to how to craft adult use in order to overcome some of the big issues that we saw with the medical program. And at the end of the day, we graduated, I believe, at the top of our class, especially when it came to things like equity, having low licensing fees, and having a system that was really, on paper, set up to make sure that everyone could participate. But as it often is, when everything seems perfect on the outside, it just might be about to fall apart. And depression creeps in at the end of high school. The realities of adulthood in an imperfect world become really apparent. And here in cannabis, the equity we fought to get into the law just wasn't showing up in reality. And that can be a very rude awakening, the real world. Now, as cannabis is maturing, it's getting older, but it's still very fragile and nascent. We've come a long way, but these next few years for cannabis will do much to shape its future. It's now being introduced to the world, its classmates, and the next generation, like states like New York and New Jersey in the Midwest, are watching closely. And they say it takes a village. Now it's up to us as an industry to turn this not into just a fully functioning adult, but a contributing member of society. We do not want this to turn into a pariah or some monster of our own making that undermines all of the work and effort that we've done so far. So now I think I'm gonna have to remind myself if I'm still talking about cannabis or remembering all of those transfers I just saw from my bank account to the registrar's office. But when I was thinking and preparing my remarks for today, I realized that there are so many things that I could be up on the stage talking about. Our hard-fought journey to legalization, the staggering transformation over the last 10 years of cannabis, moving from the world of criminality to front and center on Wall Street, or the huge push for equity, not just for marginalized communities, but for average citizens of Massachusetts to be involved in an industry that looks like it is ripe for corporate takeover. Considering, though, that we're here as attorneys at this conference to gain a skill set to incorporate into your practice, I think that probably is the most relevant vantage point. And when it comes to the legal perspective of cannabis, there's a very clear course of action, right? Understand the law and provide the best for your clients. Being good advocates means understanding the needs of your clients and the ecosystem that your client is operating in. And because I wear several hats in the industry, first and foremost being a business owner in this space, I was asked to give some remarks from that viewpoint. So thinking about what your clients want is very important. And from my vantage point, I've often been the business owner and the attorney at the same time. So I can speak to you from the perspective of counsel, but even more so from somebody who has actually had to think about how to balance those risks and harms to move a business forward. First, my advice would be to seek out knowledge, that you need to be constantly seeking out knowledge in this industry. Obviously, clients want attorneys who are tapped in, and in this industry, that means seeking knowledge in traditional and non-traditional forms. What I found is that much of this industry still happens very much underground. Even the legal stuff really happens in hush circles very often, and most of the important things that your clients really need to know to be successful are not going to be found anywhere in a book. You'll miss out if you're only using these traditional ways of networking and figuring things out. Things change so quickly, you absolutely will be left behind if you're not actively seeking out knowledge. It ties into my second piece of advice, which is networking and being involved. That is exactly how you learn what isn't in the books. There are so many times where I read the paper or look and see what is supposed to be high-level analysis that is just completely wrong. And there's no way to know this unless you're networking and involved and you're actually seeing things with your own eyes. So I would say go to cannabis events, those aligned with your practice area and those outside of your usual scope. I would also suggest providing pro bono services. Here's a shameless plug for my nonprofit, Eon. We provide pro bono services to people who are in all aspects of the industry, whether they're ancillary businesses, whether they're economic empowerment designees who are pursuing licensing, but you will find that your understanding and skill set and knowledge level grows exponentially when you actually are working with people in the industry. And not only is it valuable to you, but you really may be changing people's lives. So much of this industry is misrepresented, whether that's intentional, as it often is, or completely innocently. The reality on the ground is so nuanced that there is no substitute for seeing it firsthand. And at the end of the day, clients want attorneys that get them results, and understand here that you are often making the rules. And I say that not just when I'm talking about the work that the commission's doing or the work that we're doing on the advisory board to craft the law. I'm just talking about even in the day-to-day, in the most mundane work in the cannabis industry, there's often not a direct precedent for what you're doing. And you need to look at this as an opportunity to be aggressive on behalf of the movement in the industry. I would say, please resist acquiescing to the status quo and understand that you have more power than you likely realize when it comes to removing the barriers that exist for your clients. And whether that's opening doors for underrepresented communities or shaping regulations or just taking a different angle that creates new case law, I urge you to do that. And at the end of the day, please realize that the cannabis industry is different from any other. On one hand, the stigma surrounding the plant leads to these arbitrary roadblocks and setbacks, even with your best laid plans. On the other hand, this industry represents one of the largest economic, health, and sustainability opportunities of our lifetime. Respecting the industry and understanding that it is not just a cash cow is incredibly important. And we do here, us sitting in this room, have the opportunity to create an industry that truly puts people and community building at the center. So I would like to end by saying that you have the power. Please do use it for good. If you don't have the grit and the fortitude to fight for your clients in this industry in a way that's brave and actually may cost you, then you really shouldn't be in this industry. There are plenty of other places to make money, but this industry is about way more than that. And if you do persevere in this business, inevitably somebody will come up to you and tell you that you are an inspiration for your courage and your success in the industry. Please make sure that you deserve that praise. Thank you so much for having me, and very much appreciate it.
Does anybody have any questions? Can you talk a little bit about what the company does?
Absolutely. So Ardent, my company, is a technology and education company. After my son was born, I got an ovarian cyst, and I started using cannabis, not just smoking it, but actually using it as a medicine. So that involved turning this plant into a topical or an edible or a suppository, all of the different things that I was using to treat my condition at that time. Unfortunately, fortunately for the business opportunity, it's very difficult to make cannabis products, very difficult to make them effectively. People use very large amounts of cannabis. And so after about 10 years of making it with my oven, my toaster oven, and my crock pot, I took my medicine to a laboratory that had opened up after cannabis was legalized for medical use, MCR Laboratories, and tested my medicine and realized that even after 10 years of creating this medicine, I was still wasting 30 to 40% of the available THC and CBD. And obviously that's a lot, and it was still a very difficult process. So I took the research from the laboratory about the right time and temperature parameters, and I developed this device to perfectly activate cannabis flower, keef, or concentrate so that people can make different products with it. So it has a heating chamber, and it has 2 sensors, and there's an algorithm that pulls it up to the right temperature, holds it there, and removes any smell. And so this device, we sell it all over the globe. It's also used as a research tool in the cannabis industry, and so people are able to just put their flower in there, press the button, and when it comes out, it's immediately edible. So people can put it in capsules, they make different products with it, and we also have a line of kits that people can use to make all types of cannabis products. So we've been on the market now, we launched in 2016. I've got less than $600,000 in funding for the business. We did $3 million in revenue last year. We'll do about 4 or 5 this year, and we have a very small team, and it has been an incredible journey taking a product to market, essentially creating a new category of device on the ancillary side, and seeing what's happened in Massachusetts. And so now this year we're actually moving into digital products and a commercial version of the unit, because that was the biggest question that we got. When are you making a commercial version? Because this issue of decarboxylation obviously exists in the commercial side of the industry, where people are making products and it's very expensive for producers to make cannabis products. And so we'll have that solution coming out on the market this year, along with the second version of our device. And I'm very proud of what we've been able to do as on very little. And I think also it really shows the opportunity in the cannabis industry, that you can really go in with your ideas and create something amazing with it.
And can you talk a little bit about the financing? Because this came up earlier, the difficulties in financing and just how much money you need to get started.
Absolutely. So financing was tough, and that's why I focused on starting an ancillary business. I mean, it kind of came naturally, as you can tell by my story. But yeah, my mom was my first investor. So she invested over the first year or so about $200,000. And I never would have been successful without that kind of friends and family angel money. Things have changed quite a bit. There is money available, but there's certainly a concern in the marketplace. There was a huge upswing in valuations when the Canadian companies were hitting the market. We're seeing a huge correction in that now, because a lot of the stocks are just tanking, and so it's tough to get money now in certain areas. But there are also a lot of people interested in coming into the space. The problem is you have a lot of interest, but a lot of fear. And so you have money that's available, but people aren't really sure where they want to put it. So still, absolutely, angel money is where it's at. There are a lot more hard money lenders, I think, getting into the space. I would say I probably get 10 emails a week for business loans, offering high interest business loans. So I think that's a change that I've seen over the last couple of years. That used to wasn't available. It's not like it's great money, but at least it is money there available. We actually just started a round of fundraising at the beginning of this summer for $2.5 million. We brought in about $500,000 of that. That was at a $25 million valuation for Ardent. And so I think that if you have solid technology, if you have revenue, I think that's something that it depends on where you are in the marketplace. As I started to see the company grow and I was in bigger rooms with bigger companies, I saw that kind of the path to profitability in the cannabis industry is often very far off. And so I think if you have a company like ours, we've been profitable since year 2. So I think that if you can show good revenue and profitability, then you're in a position to be a little more picky when it comes to money.
Other questions from folks?
What do you see being the biggest challenges as the cannabis industry grows from a legal standpoint for businesses like yourself that are sort of auxiliary outside of the growing?
Certainly banking is often always an issue, and even though I'm an ancillary company, many people in the traditional market don't understand the difference, right? You have my product, we don't touch the plant, but cannabis goes inside it, right? So when people see the website or they look at what we're doing, it's very difficult for them to separate us from a plant-touching business. And so I think for ancillary businesses, it's going to be very, very important that things like payment processing and banking open up, because it can be very difficult when you're processing at 7% on your credit cards. It makes it difficult to kind of move into different areas. And yeah, so I would say that is just access to traditional services, because again, there is still so much stigma that exists in this industry. You know, being a cannabis company, sometimes you never know now. Sometimes it can make you the star of what a group is trying to do and they really want to work with you, or you're still kind of this pariah. And so I think just removing those barriers and being able to just do business as a normal company, that's just what we're all striving for on the business side.
Thank you.
Your business model did not require a license from the CCC.
That's right. And so I often say this when I talk about, how to enter the cannabis industry. In my opinion, the license side of the business, the actual growing, processing, testing of cannabis, all of the things that require a license, they're great businesses, but it's very difficult to open those businesses. There's a lot of, regulatory oversight, and you actually cannot open the business until the license exists, right? And so for my business, no, we created technology, and the person that purchases our product then puts the cannabis that they buy or get or grow at home into it. And so we actually never touch the plant itself. And I absolutely urge people to start a business on the ancillary side, even if they plan on starting a licensed business, because it's often a way to generate revenue, to get yourself known. And so that is something that your clients might want to do while they're waiting to start their licensed business. Obviously, it's really important not to do illegal things when you're starting your ancillary business, but as long as you're compliant, an ancillary business is absolutely a faster way to revenue and with much less oversight when it comes to, in comparison to the license side of the business. And there are so many ancillary opportunities that exist for people. I really think that people should explore that more. Thank you so much for having me. It really was an honor.